This week we are cooking from an northern African country, Ethiopia. Well, we were going to make Injera, kind of a utensil bread that usually goes with a stew. And at first we wanted to make just the bread, but then we thought it's more of a utensil than more of an eating thing. And then we thought, let's make the stew. But then we decided to just make both. So first we're going to make the stew, since that needs a lot of time to cook. Now we are going to make the Doro, a chicken stew. But first we need to marinate the chicken in about 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. About 1/4 of a cup. Alright, now we're going to set that aside and let that for about 10 minutes. While that's doing that, we need to cook 3 cups of onions. So now that our oil is ready, we're going to pour our onions in. We're going to get our onions in. The original recipe is actually 3 cups, but since we're cooking for 24 students, we're using 9 cups instead. So we're just going to stir these in a little bit. Then we're going to put our spices together. So we're still kind of in the Middle East because we're in northern Africa, right on the border of the Middle East. So spices are still important. So we've got a tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of ground ginger, and we're going to use another tablespoon of black pepper. And we're going to mix that in. That's going to be our spice mix. The original recipe also says to use cayenne pepper, but we know that's really spicy, and we decided not to use that. Alright, so now there's so many onions that we still got a really long ways to go. The original recipe also calls for a whole chicken, but we're just using cut up chicken breasts because it'd be too hard to pick out all the bones and be a big mess at school. So instead and the original recipe also calls for water. So we're actually just using chicken broth. So you may lose a bit of flavor from the chicken, but it's better than nothing. So we're gonna call these onions ready. So first we're gonna add our spices. And so instead of just putting something else on it, we want to stir it around with the onions for about a minute, and the paprika gives it the mostly red characteristic. But the thing is, you don't want, because if you boil spices, they don't get any flavor out of them. But if you put them in heat and let their flavors release, it's more flavorful and a lot better. All right. So we got all our spices and onions mixed in. So now after draining the chicken from the lemon juice, we're going to add all the chicken into here. And so we're pretty much just going to stir the chicken, the onions and spices until it's almost completely coated. So each piece of chicken is coated with the onions and spices. Alright, so now the chicken's completely coated, we're going to add our 3 cups of chicken broth. And then we're gonna put it at a low heat, and we're gonna let it simmer till the chicken's nice and tender. And it does smell very good, if I do say so myself. Alright, now the stew's looking good. It's simmered for a while. It's ready. Now we're gonna make our bread. Alright, so for the injera, we're using teff flour instead of regular flour. And it's usually just teff flour and water, and it sits for a long time. So it would be more of a sourdough, but that needs a couple of days to sit. So we're going to use club soda and baking powder instead. Teff flour is the smallest grain in the world, and it is grown in Ethiopia. All right, so now we got our teff flour. So we're going to have our baking powder, our salt, and our 4.5 cups of club soda. So with the club soda, We're almost making artificial bubbles instead of letting the flour do that itself, letting the flour and water do that itself for a long time. Because we didn't have that kind of time, so we're just going to mix it. So we're just going to use artificial club soda. All right, now that everything's set and ready, our injera is ready to cook. It's cooking it just like pancakes, except in a lot smaller sources. We're making a lot of small ones instead of how they originally are made. Bubbles are coming out, and so now we flip it, and as soon as we flip it, we press it down so it's still nice and flat. Alright, so now these are ready to cook, and we're going to serve them in a basket like they do in Ethiopia. Get them on, nice and hot. Alright, so now we're ready. Alright, so our soup's done. Now we've got everything done, so we're just going to ladle it out. We want more of a dip more than like a soup because we don't have a bowl, so we're just making a small little dip. Then this is our utensil. That's good stuff.